Shalom. Today I want to discuss this week's Torah portion, last week's Torah portion in relation to Pesach. So I'm probably going to focus a bit more on the Torah portions, just to continue from last week. So last week we finished off Shemot, which was actually supposed to be Vayikra. He called, which is the first Torah portion. What's interesting is that the cycle is in sync with the new month, Nisan, the Passover. The new cycle for this year is going to start, and the Passover is the marker or the start for all the festivals for this year. Very important, just like we discovered last week that the Sabbath is the marker for the cycles. In the same way, the first feast is the marker for this new cycle, the beginning. Vayikra, he called, together with Tav, which is this week's Torah portion, which means he commanded. So he called to command, or he called to give more instructions. Now, when you read the first verse in Tav, Yahweh commanded Moses in the Ohel Moed, or holy place, regarding the burnt offering. Tav, Tzadik Vav, or righteous man, is what is signified by a burnt offering or a living sacrifice, as we discovered last week. So this is a continuation of the purpose of what the tabernacle is designed for. It is designed to create righteous men and women of Elohim, and that's also the word Yisrael, or straight ones of Elohim, and we are part of the household of Israel. So the purpose of the tabernacle is to do the transformation cycle, to transform us into righteousness. So as we engage with the tabernacle in every area of the tabernacle, the outer court, the holy place, and Holy of Holies, we will be fully transformed. In this current life state that we're in, we only have access to the holy place. The bride is where the Holy of Holies will be. That's the inner chamber, where the marriage covenant takes place. The Mosaic covenant takes place in the Ohel Moed, and the Abrahamic covenant takes place in the outer court. So those are the progressive covenants. It's actually the same covenant, and the result of engaging with the covenant the first time is to bring you in as a bond servant, which is to do with engaging with the covenant of Abraham, first step. The next one is Ohel Moed. That's where you engage with the covenant extended to Moshe, which is about the kingdom of priests, which is a higher level, where you now serve and help facilitate Yahweh's things with people who are newly coming in as bond servants. And then the bride is to do with the Mikdash, the Holy of Holies, which is the marriage covenant, the highest form of the covenant, or the most elevated state which you will reach, engaging with the three phases or stages of the covenant. So the one is not replacing the other. As we've seen last week, the cycles continue. Where the one stopped, the next one starts. Last week was the finishing of the tabernacle. That doesn't mean that everything's complete. Now we stop. No, it now has a purpose for a higher meaning or a higher calling, and that is to transform people. So to build the house is one thing, then to use the house is next thing, and to be transformed by the house is the last thing. And we are in the process of being transformed into the bride, or to prepare as the bride. So it's all about the marriage covenant at the end of the day. Tav is also to do with Sarah. It means to, I think, call which meaning of tzav it is, but it's anyway where Yahweh met with Sarah because he done to her according to his word, and Yitzhak was born. And that's in line with the construction of the tabernacle. Now Yahweh's baby is finished, which is the tabernacle, which has to do with new babies being born again. So the tabernacle process is signifying the mother, which is Sarah, or the priesthood, who are now looking after the newborn babies. And then Sarah will be transformed into the bride, which then flow on to the marriage covenant. So beautiful pictures from Shemot and also Vayikra. Now the other thing about Vayikra or Leviticus is it says he called, and that calling is now after the finishing of the tabernacle. So Yahweh is calling out to the nations, and the promise Yahweh made to Abraham is that he will have a generation that you won't be able to count. It will be like the sand of the sea. Now the sand has to do with Adam, because Adam comes from the ground or the sand, and the sea signify the nations. So Adam, which has now become the nations, is going to come in through the covenant and become sons and daughters of Abraham. And that is what the premise of the calling is, or the reason for the calling is to call out through the Abrahamic covenant foundation. And as I said, then there's another call to become part of the priesthood, calling on your life, which is to do with the gifts of the Spirit, receiving the Spirit of Yahweh, which is a higher calling than just coming into the covenant. And then there's the highest calling, and that is the calling to become part of the bride. So when you look at, I've asked the question last week, when you look at the wedding, there's the bride at the bride's table, and there are the guests. So who's the bride and who's the guests? Now we always thought that, those who will be raptured, or the first resurrection, or the gathering, they will be the bride. Yes, that is correct. Now, where are the guests? Or are the guests also gathered? Not really, because the significance of the symbolism of the gathering is to carry the bride over the Kidron Valley into the house, which is a covenant, a marriage covenant symbolism. And it's only the bride that will be carried over. So that means that the guests are those who are not part of the first resurrection. So they come from the 1,000-year period, as well as from the second resurrection. Now, I'm not going to get too technical about it. It's just something I want to put out there so you can meditate upon it. And I want to leave you with those thoughts. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you soon. Shalom.